If you've been running Google ad campaigns and been frustrated by results following Google's own recommendations, then this video might just be for you. I'm going to show you how to deal with the limited by budget recommendation in your Google ad campaigns. I'm going to go into assessing the feasibility of either increasing or not increasing your Google ad budget based on metrics within your ad campaigns. I'm going to go further into detail of assessing how to work out whether the cost is going to be feasible relative to the return on ad spend you're going to get, and how to gain some context as to why the system may be suggesting that you should increase your Google ad budget. So diving right in, you're going to be familiar with how this looks. Now, this is going to probably be familiar from a number of advertisers, but you're in your campaign, you can see your list of your Google campaigns in your ad account, and you're going to see this limited by budget. It's quite common to see. Google's basically saying that the budget that you've got allocated to that campaign is limiting its reach in some form. Let's just take one of these campaigns here. By clicking on this, it's going to bring up the optimization window, and it's going to give you an idea of what you should increase your daily spend to, and in some cases, if you've got the volume, you've got a bit of history, it's going to estimate what your weekly revenue is going to be and what the weekly cost increase is going to be. So in this case, it's asking for a substantial increase from £66 a day to 190. That's pretty big. You're nearly tripling the size of your campaign budget with that, and it's saying you're going to get an increase in weekly revenue of £1,950 for an increase in weekly spend of 868. So on the face of it, you think, oh, okay, I'm going to get an extra 2k a week in revenue. That's good, but for an increase of 868 spend, when you do the maths, the return on ad spend isn't so good. 1,950 versus an £868 spend, the return on ad spend is 224%. And in the case of this particular account, the break-even return on ad spend needs to be 500%. So incrementally, those additional sales that could be achieved by increasing this budget are going to actually be making a loss. So this is something you just got to watch out for. Just remember that Google's telling you what will happen. What's going to be the weekly cost increase, what's going to be the anticipated revenue increase, but it doesn't know the context of your business. It doesn't know your business model. It doesn't know it all depends on what's in the campaign. It doesn't know what your margins are. So yeah, Google's quite rightly making this recommendation, but in the context of this business, it isn't going to be the right move to increase the budget. My advice is always look at what your campaigns are actually doing. Look at what is the daily spend versus what you've got allocated. Look at what your campaigns are doing. Look at your daily budget and look at the cost over the last 7 days. And has it exceeded or matched that budget? So it's something that you've got to kind of figure out is say, okay, are we spending the budget that we have allocated to it consistently? And if not, why is that? And why is it asking me for more budget? So when it comes to assessing whether you should increase your budget or not, are you meeting your expectation? Are you meeting your goals? Are your campaigns meeting the return on ad spend? And something to look at here is going to be, is maybe the return on ad spend in excess of what you're going for right now? Look at the conversion value over cost column. That's going to give you some insight as to whether it is worth increasing that ad budget or not. Say for example, you've got here a return on ad spend of 10.6. when your target return on ad spend in your bid strategy may be 950 or 9.5, for example. So this is actually overachieving what might be if that were your budget, if that were your target. This is actually overachieving that. So that if you've got that alongside with a recommendation from Google to increase the budget, then that might be perfectly feasible, because it's actually saying that it's overachieving what you can go for, because it's being more selective in the audience it can go for in terms of qualified traffic. So that's another indicator that might suggest that it is perhaps feasible to increase your budget. Also, in contrast to that, is it because it's low? Now, why is it low? Has it got the volume to do that? Now, remember, your average order value can have an impact too, because a high average order value product's likely going to have a higher cost per action. So is your budget actually enough for it to compete in the market, to get the number of sales a day? For example, we've got an average cost per sale here of £54. Is the daily budget higher than that? If not, then and you're selling a product that's got an average order value of over £500, is that going to be that just simply the budget isn't high enough to accommodate a daily, getting a sale at least once a day, and then allowing the budget to optimize? Now, I'll go into more detail on that in another video. I'm going to put a a link in the description that takes you through that that thought process of kind of considering your daily budget relative to your average order value and potential margin for your products in much more detail. But also, alongside that, having context as to why that it might be suggesting that. I've mentioned about having a notification of increasing the budget when maybe you are not spending the daily budget allocated, but it might be that Google can see a pending increase in demand on the horizon. So have some idea of this, and this is going to be much easier if you're an established retailer, an established advertiser. You're going to have data from last year to go on. You're going to kind of think, oh well, actually, we're going to see an increase in demand at this time of year. If you're not an established advertiser and this is your first year, or perhaps you're introducing a new range to your store and you haven't got kind of historic data on this particular campaign, then you're going to have to use some free tools, and Google Trends is a great tool for this. It's freely available. You can kind of get an idea as to what is happening over the last 12 months. You can change the date range up here to be a custom date range, so you can look what happened in previous years. Then you can kind of estimate where you might be. So right now, looking back at last, so this area here, this is 12-month view. So this area here is what happened sort of in the last 12 months, 7th of July onwards. So as we approach that, there's clearly an increase in demand here. Now this example is for paddleboards, very seasonal product. So if we had a campaign advertising these products, and we've got a notification from Google saying you need to increase your budget, campaign budgets, and maybe we're not actually meeting our daily spend, the daily spend based on the current budget, but it can see that it knows that there's a pending a significant increase in volume as well here, because we're going up from what is just over 30% of the peak to the peak in a matter of weeks. So that is actually going to give you some context as to say, actually, yes, there is going to be some demand on the horizon. We are going to be limited by budget, and if we don't increase it, we're not going to be able to capitalize on that increased demand. So as I say, Google Trends is a great tool for this. Put the product in there, see what's going to be on the horizon. Also, the Google Keyword Planner is a great tool for that too. As I say, I talk about this in a couple of other videos. We've got another video based on seasonal demand. I'll also put that as a link in the description of the video if you want to watch that. So if you're kind of concerned about seasonality, then I'd recommend having a look at that. So remember that Google recommendations are in the context of clicks and conversions only, not what's happening in your own business. It doesn't know what your business model is. It's your job to have some oversight as to this, and at the end of the day, apply the right constraints that are suitable for your business. If you've got some value from today's video, please like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. We've got a number of videos coming up in the near future on budgets and Google Ads, and of course other things on managing your campaigns too in the near future. So stay tuned if you want to see more of that. That's all for today, and thanks for watching.